The space station hung in the darkness between three dying stars. They called it the Crucible, and it was the oldest arena in the known galaxy. Billions of beings had watched fights here. Thousands of warriors had died on its bloody floor, and today, for the first time in history, a human would step into its ring. Stood at the window of his small room and watched the ships arrive. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all carrying spectators from distant worlds. They came to watch blood, they came to watch death, and most of all, they came to watch the undefeatable champion crush another foolish challenger. Was 32 years old, he was not tall, he was not heavy with muscle. By the standards of most species in the galaxy, he looked weak and fragile. His skin was soft, his bones were thin. He had no claws, no scales, no extra arms. He was just a man. But there was something in his eyes that made others uncomfortable. A stillness, a patience, the look of someone who was always thinking, always watching, always planning 3 steps ahead. The door behind him opened and walked in. She was younger than him by 5 years, with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She was his handler, his strategist, and the only person in the galaxy he fully trusted. "The lottery results are in," she said. Her voice was flat, but he could hear the tension underneath. Did not turn from the window. Who did they give us? Was quiet for a moment. Then she said the name that everyone in the galaxy knew. The Unbroken. Closed his eyes, he let out a slow breath. Then he turned to face her. First round. First round, she confirmed. They put us against him immediately. No warm-up fights, no easier opponents, just straight to the champion. Walked to the small table in the center of the room and sat down. On the table was a data pad showing information about the combat trials. He had been studying it for weeks. The odds, he asked. 1 to 10,000, said. Some betting houses are not even accepting wagers. They say there is no point. They say you will be dead in 30 seconds. Nodded slowly. What do they know about? Sat across from him and pulled up a holographic display. The image of a massive creature appeared in the air between them. It stood 9 feet tall, with 4 powerful arms covered in dark scales. Its head was flat and wide, with small red eyes that showed no mercy. Its body was built like a fortress of muscle and bone. He is, said, their species has dominated the combat trials for 300 years. They are stronger, faster, and tougher than almost any other race. Their scales can stop most blades. Their bones do not break easily, and is the best of all of them. How many fights has he won? 847 consecutive victories. He has never lost. He has never been seriously injured. In most of his fights, his opponents do not even land a single hit. I studied the image carefully. Show me his fights. For the next several hours, they watched recordings of matches. They watched him tear apart warriors twice his size. They watched him move with impossible speed for something so large. They watched him break bones, crush skulls, and end lives with casual ease. But was not watching the violence. He was watching something else. Do you see it? He asked after the 20th fight. She frowned. See what? He never attacks first. Looked at the screen, was standing in the center of the arena, waiting. His opponent, a 6-armed insect creature, was circling him carefully, did not move, he just waited. and when the insect finally attacked, reacted with perfect precision and ended the fight in 2 blows. He always waits, said. He lets his opponents come to him. He reacts instead of acts every single time. Because he does not need to attack first, said. He is so strong that he can just wait for mistakes and punish them. Why take risks when you do not have to? That is what everyone thinks, said, but I see something different. I see a fighter who has never had to deal with real pressure. He has never faced someone who made him uncomfortable. He has never been forced to act before he was ready. Lined forward, what are you planning? Did not answer right away. He paused the recording on a frame where stood motionless, waiting for his opponent to make the first move. The champion's red eyes were calm, confident, bored even. Everyone says he is untouchable, said quietly. But that is not true. They say no one has ever touched him. That is different. It means no one has found a way yet. It does not mean there is no way. He looked at with those still, patient eyes. I need the complete rule book of the combat trials. Every rule, every law, every tradition. Everything that has ever been written about how these fights work. His eyes widened. That is over 4,000 pages in 12 different languages. Some of those rules are thousands of years old. Then we should start reading. Outside the window, more ships continued to arrive. The news had spread across the galaxy. The undefeatable champion against the weak human. It was not meant to be a fight. It was meant to be an execution. A reminder to the younger species that they did not belong among the ancient powers. The human delegation had already received messages of sympathy from other civilizations. They were sorry for Earth's loss. They hoped humanity would not take the defeat too hard. They suggested that perhaps humans should wait another century or two before trying to participate in galactic affairs again. Read each message carefully, then he deleted them all. 3 days passed, did not sleep. He sat in his room reading page after page of ancient rules and forgotten laws. His eyes grew red, his body grew tired, but his mind stayed sharp. The combat trials were old, very old. They had been created thousands of years ago by species that no longer existed. Over time, new rules had been added, but old rules were rarely removed. The result was a massive collection of laws and traditions that no one fully understood anymore. Most fighters did not bother reading the rules. They trained their bodies. They sharpened their weapons. They trusted in strength and speed to win their fights. But was not most fighters. On the night before the fight, found him sitting alone in the dark. The data pad was still in his hands, but the screen was off. He was staring at nothing. Did you find something? She asked. Looked up at her, and for the first time since the lottery results were announced, he smiled. Everyone has been asking the wrong question, he said. They keep asking how I can beat in a fight, but that is not the right question. Then what is the right question? Stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the crucible was glowing with lights. Millions of spectators were already filling the arena. They had come to watch a human die. The right question, said, is whether we have to fight at all. Stared at him. I do not understand. Turned to face her. His eyes were bright despite the exhaustion. There was something dangerous in them now, something that had not been there before. I found something in the rules, he said, something everyone has forgotten, something that changes everything. He handed her the data pad. On the screen was a passage written in an ancient language with a translation below it. Read it once, then she read it again. Then she looked up at with her mouth hanging open. "Oh, this is insane," she whispered. "Yes," agreed, "but it is also legal." Outside, the crowd was chanting his name. The ground shook with their excitement. Tomorrow, they would see their champion destroy another victim. Or so they thought. Looked out at the arena one last time. Somewhere in there was preparing for the easiest fight of his life. He had no idea what was coming. "Get some rest," told. "Tomorrow we change history." The rule book of the combat trials was a mess. Thousands of pages written by dozens of species over thousands of years. Some parts contradicted other parts. Some laws had been added to fix problems that no longer existed. Some traditions were so old that no one remembered why they had been created in the first place. Sat on the floor of his room, surrounded by data pads and holographic screens. Her eyes were burning from reading so much text. Her head was pounding, but she could not stop. Not now, not when they had found something this important. "Read it again," she said to. "I need to make sure I understand." Pulled up the ancient passage on the main screen. It was written in the language of the champion's own species. The translation appeared below it. "The right of declared intent," read aloud. "Before combat begins, a challenger may formally declare their intention to strike. The challenger must specify the exact location and sequence of their attacks. The defender may not initiate offensive action during this phase. The defender may only defend. If the defender fails to prevent even one declared strike, it is recorded as a spiritual defeat." Shook her head slowly. "This is thousands of years old. Why would anyone ever use this? You would be telling your opponent exactly where you plan to attack. It would be suicide." "That is why everyone forgot about it," said. "No one has used it in centuries, maybe longer. It was probably created for religious reasons, some kind of honor ritual between ancient warriors, but it was never removed from the rules." He pulled up another passage. "There is more. Look at this part." Lined forward and read the text on the screen. "If the challenger successfully lands 5 declared strikes before the official match begins, they may invoke the right of proven dominance. Victory is granted without further combat. The defender is considered spiritually broken and may not refuse the result." His hands were shaking now. 5 strikes. You have to hit him 5 times while he knows exactly where you are going to attack, and he will be doing everything he can to stop you. "Well, yes." "This is impossible. Has 4 arms. His reaction time is faster than any human. His scales are like armor. Even if you tell him where you will attack, you will never get through his defense." Walked to the window and looked out at the arena in the distance. The lights were still bright. The crowd was still gathering. "Everyone thinks like you," he said quietly. "Everyone thinks about strengths, his speed, his power, his defense, but no one thinks about his weakness. He does not have a weakness. That is why he has never lost." Turned to face her. He has never lost because he has never faced real pressure. Think about it. Every opponent he has ever faced attacked him directly. They tried to overpower him. They tried to outspeed him. They played his game and they lost. He walked back to the table and sat down. But the right of declared intent is different. Under this right cannot attack. He can only defend, and he cannot defend by moving away or creating distance. He has to stand there and stop my strikes using only his arms and body positioning. That should be easy for him. Should be, agreed, but he has never had to do it before. He has always been the hunter, not the hunted. He has always been in control. What happens when you take away his control? What happens when you force him to react to pressure instead of creating it? Was quiet for a long moment. She was starting to understand. You think he will make mistakes? I think he does not know how to handle being on defense. I think his mind will not be able to adjust. He has spent 800 fights as the predator. He does not know how to be prey. Pulled up the footage of fights again. He pointed at the screen. Look at his face in every fight. Look at his body language. He is calm, relaxed. He knows he is going to win before the fight even starts, but I have also studied the few moments when his opponents did something unexpected. Watch this one. He played a clip from a fight 300 matches ago. His opponent, a fast-moving reptile creature, had feinted left and then attacked from the right. It was a simple trick, but for just a moment, his eyes had widened. His arms had moved a fraction of a second too slow. The reptile's claw had come within inches of his throat before recovered and killed him. He was surprised, said, for just a second. Exactly, and what I am planning will be much more surprising than a simple feint. I am going to tell him exactly what I am going to do, and then I am going to do it anyway. His brain will not know how to process that. He expects opponents to hide their intentions. He does not expect someone to announce them and still succeed. Stood up and paced around the room. Her mind was racing. Even if you are right about his psychology, you still have to actually hit him 5 times. His scales are too hard for your fists, and you cannot bring weapons into the arena. Smiled, can I not? He pulled up another section of the rules. The right of declared intent allows the challenger to carry a declaration instrument. It is a small blade, no longer than a finger, used to mark the locations of declared strikes. In ancient times, warriors would use it to draw symbols on their opponent's body before combat. A blade's eyes widened. They let you bring a blade. A small one under the ceremonial rules. It was meant for marking, not killing. But the rules do not say I cannot use it to actually strike. Sat down heavily. Her mind was spinning with possibilities. So your plan is to invoke this ancient right, declare 5 strikes, and then use speed and psychology to land them before can stop you. And if you succeed, you win without having to fight him at all. Well, that is the plan. But what if you fail? What if you only land 3 or 4 strikes? His face became serious. Then the fight proceeds normally, and I will probably die. The room was silent. Outside, the noise of the crowd was growing louder. The whole galaxy was waiting to watch a human be destroyed. Looked at for a long time, she had known him for 5 years. She had seen him do impossible things. She had watched him solve problems that no one else could solve, but this was different. This was his life. Can you do it? She asked, honestly. Can you really land 5 strikes on the greatest warrior in the galaxy? thought about the question carefully. He never lied to, he never made promises he could not keep. I have watched every one of his fights, he said finally. I know how he moves, I know how he thinks, I know his patterns and his habits. I know that he lifts his lower right arm when he gets angry. I know that his throat scales part slightly when he exhales. I know that his eyes are sensitive to bright light. He paused. Is it guaranteed? No, but it is possible, and possible is all I need. I took a deep breath, then she nodded. What do you need from me? I need you to help me practice. I need to train my speed until I can move faster than I have ever moved before. I need to memorize every inch of body, and I need you to find out exactly where the arena lights are positioned. The lights, why? Picked up the small ceremonial blade that had been delivered to his room. It was barely longer than his finger, with a thin edge that gleamed in the light. Because, he said, a blade can do more than cut, it can also reflect. Smiled for the first time in days. You really are insane. Maybe, but I am also human, and humans have been solving impossible problems since we lived in caves and threw rocks at animals 10 times our size. This is just another problem, and every problem has a solution. He looked at the arena one more time. In a few hours he would walk into that ring. Millions would be watching. They would expect him to die. They were going to be very disappointed. Come on, said, we have work to do. The arena was full. Over 2 million beings had packed themselves into the Crucible's massive stands. They came from 12 different star systems. They spoke hundreds of different languages, but they had all come for the same reason. They wanted to see blood. Giant screens floated above the arena floor, showing images of the two fighters who would face each other today. On one screen was the Unbroken. His image was 10 stories tall. His red eyes glowed with power. The crowd screamed his name like a prayer. On the other screen was the Human. He looked small, he looked weak. His image drew laughter from the crowd. Some threw food at the screen, others made rude gestures. A human in the combat trials was a joke. A human against was not even worth watching. But they watched anyway, because watching a powerful creature destroy a weak one was still entertaining. It reminded them of their place in the galaxy. It reminded them why the strong ruled and the weak obeyed. In the tunnel below the arena waited. He was wearing simple fighting clothes, white fabric that would show every drop of blood. On his belt was the small ceremonial blade. In his mind was the plan he had memorized 100 times. Stood beside him, her face was pale with worry. The ambassador filed a complaint, she said. They tried to stop you from invoking the right. They said it was outdated and should not be allowed. What did the High Arbiter say? He reviewed the rules for 6 hours. In the end, he had no choice. The right was never removed. It is still legal. They cannot stop you from using it. Nodded, good. But knows now, they told him what you are planning. He has had time to prepare. It does not matter. How can it not matter? He knows you will invoke the right. He knows you will try to land 5 strikes. He will be ready for you. He turned to face her. His eyes were calm, steady. There was no fear in them at all. He can know everything about my plan, said. It will not help him. Knowing what is coming and being able to stop it are 2 different things. A man can know that a storm is coming. That does not mean he can stop the rain. The roar of the crowd grew louder. The time had come. A voice echoed through the tunnel. It was the announcer speaking in the common galactic language. The challenger will now enter the arena. I took a deep breath, then he walked toward the light. The noise hit him like a physical force, 2 million voices screaming, howling, laughing. The arena floor was a circle of white sand 200 meters across. Above it, the lights blazed like artificial suns. Cameras floated everywhere, capturing every angle. Walked to the center of the arena and stopped. He did not look at the crowd. He did not react to the insults and laughter. He simply stood there waiting, his hands loose at his sides. Then the crowd went quiet. A deep silence fell over the arena, because now the champion was entering. The Unbroken walked through the opposite tunnel. Each step shook the ground. His forearms were spread wide, absorbing the love of his followers. His scaled body gleamed like polished metal. His red eyes found immediately and locked onto him. The crowd erupted again. They chanted his name. They praised his glory. They begged him to make the kill slow and painful. Walked to the center of the arena and stopped 5 meters from up close. The difference between them was even more extreme. Was 3 times taller and 10 times heavier. His arms could crush stone. His claws could tear through metal. Looked up at him without flinching. The High Arbiter floated down from his platform above the arena. Was ancient even by galactic standards. His body was wrapped in ceremonial robes, and his face was hidden behind a mask of gold. He carried a staff of black metal that was older than most civilizations. "We gather for the combat trials," announced. His voice was amplified across the entire arena. "The challenger is of Earth. The defender is the unbroken of. The fight will proceed according to the ancient laws." Well, he raised his staff to begin the match. But before he could speak again, raised his hand. "I invoke the right of declared intent." His voice was not loud, he did not shout, but the arena's sound systems carried his words to every corner of the crucible, and in an instant 2 million voices went silent. This golden mask turned toward. Behind the mask, ancient eyes widened with surprise. "What did you say?" Spoke again, this time in perfect ceremonial. He had learned the language in 3 days, every word, every accent, every subtle tone. "I invoke the right of declared intent, as is my right under the ancient laws, as written by the founders of these trials, as never removed by any amendment or revision." The crowd was in chaos. No one understood what was happening. Translators scrambled to explain. On the screens, text appeared in dozens of languages, describing a rite that no one had heard of in centuries. His confident expression changed. For the first time since entering the arena, he looked uncertain. "What is this trick?" he growled. "What game are you playing, human?" Looked up at him calmly. "No trick, no game, just the rules that your own ancestors wrote, the rules that you forgot, but the rules still exist, and I intend to use them." Raised a hand for silence. The crowd obeyed slowly, their confusion turning to curiosity. "The human speaks the truth," announced. "The right of declared intent is ancient, but it remains valid. The challenger may invoke it, the defender cannot refuse. Well, he turned to. If you invoke this right, you must declare your strikes. You must tell the defender exactly where you will attack. You must announce your intentions before all witnesses. Do you understand? Well, I understand. And you understand that if you fail to land 5 strikes, the fight will proceed normally, that you will face in direct combat. Well, I understand. Then declare your intent. Took a step forward. He looked up at, meeting those red eyes without fear. I declare 5 strikes against my opponent. His voice was clear and strong. Every word echoed through the arena. First strike, the left knee. Shifted his weight, automatically moving to protect that spot. And second strike, the lower right wrist. This lower right arm tensed. On third strike, the throat. The crowd gasped. The throat was one of the few weak points on a body. Even with their scales, a blow there could cause serious damage. Fourth strike, the center of the chest. Snorted, his chest was the most heavily armored part of his body. No one could break through that defense. Fifth, a strike between the eyes. The arena went completely silent. 2 million beings stared at the small human who had just announced the most impossible attack in combat history. Laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that shook the air. You are either very brave or very stupid, the champion said. You have just told me exactly where you will attack. You have given me everything I need to stop you. There is no way you can land even one of those strikes, let alone all 5. Smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. Then you have nothing to worry about. Raised his staff one more time. The right of declared intent is acknowledged. The defender may not initiate offensive action until all declarations are attempted. The defender may only defend. The challenger may use his declaration instrument to mark his strikes. He brought the staff down. I'll begin. Settled into his defensive stance. All 4 arms moved into position, covering the 5 declared targets. His legs were planted wide. His eyes were focused. He was a wall of muscle and scale, a fortress that had never been broken. Stood perfectly still. He did not reach for his blade. He did not move his feet. He simply watched. 1 second passed, then another, then 10 more. The crowd grew restless. They had expected action. They had expected the human to charge forward and be swatted down like an insect. But did not move. He just stood there watching with those calm, patient eyes. His jaw tightened. This was not what he expected. This was not how fights worked. Opponents were supposed to attack. That was the whole point. Come, human, growled. Come and meet your death. I still did not move. 20 seconds passed, 30, a full minute. And then's upper right arm twitched, just a small movement, a tiny shift in position as his muscles grew tired of holding the same stance. I saw it. He had been waiting for it. And then, before anyone could blink, he moved. Moved like water flowing through a crack. One moment he was standing still. The next moment he was already under guard, his small blade flashing in the arena lights. The ceremonial blade touched his left knee. A thin line of violet blood appeared on the dark scales. The crowd screamed, not in excitement, in shock. Roared and swung his upper arms downward, but was already gone. He had danced backward before the blow could connect. He stood 5 meters away, the blade held loosely in his hand, a single drop of violet blood on its edge. First strike announced. His ancient voice trembled slightly. In all his years, he had never seen anything like this. The giant screens showed the replay in slow motion. His arm had twitched, a tiny gap had opened in his defense, and had exploded through that gap like a bullet, striking the exposed knee and retreating before could react. The whole thing had taken less than half a second. Stared at the human with new eyes, the contempt was gone. In its place was something he had not felt in 800 fights. On the certainty. Lucky said, but his voice was not as confident as before. A lucky strike, you will not get another. Did not answer, he simply returned to his waiting stance and watched. Reset his defense. This time he held his position more carefully. His arms did not move. His legs were locked. He would not give the human another opening. 10 seconds passed, 20. The crowd was completely silent now. They had come to watch an execution. Instead, they were watching something they did not understand. His eyes narrowed. The human was not attacking. Why was he not attacking? Was he scared? Was he planning something? What was he waiting for? The uncertainty was eating at his mind. He was used to being in control. He was used to knowing exactly what would happen. But this human was not playing by the rules that understood. He was doing something different, something unpredictable. And that made angry. Stop hiding, shouted. Stop playing games, face me like a warrior. He tilted his head slightly. But I am facing you, I am right here. The question is, why are you not facing me? His upper left arm jerked forward in rage. It was a reflex, an automatic response to the insult. Under normal rules, he would have been allowed to attack, but the right of declared intent changed everything. He could not strike, he could only defend. And in that moment of rage, his lower right arm lifted slightly. Moved again. This time was ready. He saw the human coming. He adjusted his defense. His lower right arm snapped back down to protect the wrist, but was not aiming for the wrist anymore. At the last possible instant, he changed direction. He slid past the defensive arm and tapped his blade against the back of the wrist instead of the front. The same target, different angle. The second strike announced. The arena erupted in noise. Half the crowd was screaming in disbelief. The other half was screaming in anger. How was this possible? How was a weak, fragile human landing hits on the greatest warrior in the galaxy? Spun around, his arms sweeping through the air, but was already gone again. He had retreated to a safe distance, his breathing calm and steady. You are fast, admitted. There was grudging respect in his voice now. Faster than I expected, but speed alone will not save you. I know your targets, I know your tricks. You will not touch me again. He pulled all four arms close to his body, creating a tight shell of scale and muscle. His throat was covered, his chest was covered, his face was protected behind a wall of interlocking limbs. Come, said, try again, I am ready. Nodded slowly. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of white sand from the arena floor. His eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" Through the sand. It was not aimed at his eyes. That would have been too obvious, and his inner eyelids would have protected him anyway. Instead, the sand was aimed at the air in front of his face. The fine particles caught the light and scattered it in all directions. For just a moment, the bright arena lights reflected off 1,000 tiny grains of sand, creating a blinding flash directly in front of his eyes. Blinked just once, just for a fraction of a second. And in that fraction of a second, his concentration broke, his defensive stance wavered, his arms shifted just slightly as his brain processed the unexpected sensory input. Was already moving. He ducked under his upper arms, twisted past the lower ones, and pressed his blade against the champion's throat. A gasp rolled through the crowd. "The third strike," said. His voice was barely a whisper now. I froze. The blade was still touching his throat. One thin line of violet blood trickled down his neck. If this had been a real fight with a real weapon, he would be dead. I stepped back slowly. His eyes never left his face. The champion was breathing hard. His massive chest heaved with each breath. His red eyes were wide with an emotion he had never felt before in combat. Fear. He was afraid. For the first time in 847 fights, the Unbroken was afraid. "This cannot be happening," whispered. "This cannot be real." "It is very real," said calmly, "and there are still 2 strikes remaining." Shook his massive head. His fear was turning into something else, something more dangerous, panic. "No, no, I will not lose to a human. I will not be humiliated by a creature from a backwater planet. I am the Unbroken. I am the greatest warrior in the galaxy. I will not fall." He abandoned his defensive stance and rushed forward, all 4 arms reaching for his body. If he could just grab the human, just get his hands on that fragile flesh, he could tear him apart. But Staff came down between them with a crack of thunder. "You cannot attack," the High Arbiter roared. "The right forbids it. You may only defend." His hand stopped inches from his face. His whole body trembled with rage and fear and frustration. He wanted to kill, he needed to kill, but the ancient laws held him back. Slowly, painfully, his arms. "Continue," commanded. Had not moved during the entire confrontation. He had stood perfectly still, watching his outburst with those calm, patient eyes. He had not flinched. He had not run. He had trusted the rules to protect him. And the rules had held. "The 2 strikes remaining," said. "Shall we continue?" Dropped to one knee. His legs were shaking, not from exhaustion, but from the emotional weight of what was happening. He had never felt like this. He did not know how to process it. His mind was breaking under the pressure. He wrapped all 4 arms around his torso, protecting his chest and face. His head was buried behind a wall of scaled muscle. No opening, no gap, no way through. "You cannot reach me," growled. "I will not move. I will not react. I will just wait here until you give up or until the time runs out. You cannot touch my chest. You cannot touch my face. It is over, human. You have lost." Looked at the defensive shell that had created. The champion was right. There was no physical way to break through that defense. No human could punch through those arms. No blade could cut through those scales. If the fight was about strength, would win. But the fight was never about strength. Raised his blade and held it at an angle. The arena lights were directly above them, blazing with enough power to illuminate the entire station. He adjusted the angle of the blade carefully, catching one of the light beams on its polished surface. A beam of reflected light shot out from the blade like a laser. It passed between the gaps in its defensive stance and hit him directly in the eye. Grunted and shifted his arms to block the light, but as he moved, his chest was exposed for just a moment. Walked forward calmly and placed his palm flat against chest. Fourth strike. The crowd was silent, completely, utterly silent. 2 million beings sat in stunned disbelief as the screens showed the replay. The human had not even used his blade. He had simply touched the champion's chest with his bare hand. And it counted. Under the rules of the right, any deliberate contact with a declared target counted as a strike. Looked up at the human standing before him. His red eyes were filled with desperation now. "Please," he whispered. It was so quiet that only could hear. "Please, do not do this. My honor, my people, everything will be destroyed. Please." Looked down at the broken champion. He felt no joy, no satisfaction, just a deep, quiet certainty about what needed to happen. "I am sorry," he said, "but this is not about you. This is about showing the galaxy that strength is not the only thing that matters. This is about proving that humans belong here. This is about changing everything." He raised his blade one last time. Covered his face with all four arms. There was no gap, no opening. The scales overlapped perfectly. His eyes were completely hidden behind layers of muscle and bone. "You cannot reach me," said, but his voice was hollow now, empty. He knew it was over, he just did not know how. Looked up at the arena lights, then he looked at his blade, then he smiled. "The rules say I must strike my declared target," said, "but they do not say I must strike with the blade itself. They say I may use my declaration instrument, and an instrument can work in many ways." He raised the blade and caught the light one more time. The reflected beam shot forward, piercing through the tiny gap between his fingers and touched the skin between his eyes. Declaration instruments include any extension of intent, quoted from the ancient text. "Light from my blade, directed by my hand, carrying my will, it is still a strike." Was frozen. The council members in the stands were screaming at each other. Arguments erupted across the arena about whether this counted, whether it was legal, whether it was fair. But knew the rules better than anyone. He had studied them for thousands of years, and the human was right. The ancient laws did not specify physical contact, they an extension of intent. And light, directed by a declaration instrument held by the challenger, aimed at the declared target, met that definition. "Fifth strike announced." The words echoed across the arena like thunder. The unbroken champion of 847 fights had just been defeated. And the fight had never even begun. The silence lasted for exactly 3 seconds. Then the arena exploded. Half the crowd was screaming in rage. The spectators roared with fury, throwing objects at the arena floor, demanding that the result be overturned. They had come to watch their champion destroy another victim. Instead, they had witnessed his complete humiliation. The other half of the crowd was screaming in joy. The smaller species, the younger civilizations, the races that had always been pushed aside by the ancient powers. They had just watched one of their own defeat the undefeatable. They had just seen proof that strength was not everything. In the center of the arena stood perfectly still. He did not celebrate. He did not raise his arms in victory. He simply waited. Floated down to the arena floor, his ancient body was trembling. In all his years as High Arbiter, he had never seen anything like this. The challenger may now invoke, announced. His voice was amplified across the entire station. The right of proven dominance. If invoked, victory will be granted without further combat. Was still on his knees, his forearms hung loose at his sides, his head was bowed. He looked like a statue of a broken god. Looked down at the champion for a long moment, then he spoke. I invoke the right of proven dominance. The match is concluded. I claim victory. The words hit like physical blows. He shuddered with each one. His whole body seemed to collapse in on itself. No, he whispered, no, this is not how it was supposed to happen. This is not possible. This is not real. But it was real. The ancient laws were clear. 5 strikes had been declared and delivered. The rite had been completed. The challenger had won. Raised his staff. The match is decided. The challenger of Earth is victorious. The defender of is defeated. The arena descended into chaos. Warriors tried to storm the floor. Security drones blocked them. Fights broke out in the stands. Chairs were thrown. Blood was spilled. But at the center of it all remained calm. He waited until the security forces had restored order. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. Met him at the edge of the arena floor. Her eyes were red with tears. Her hands were shaking. "Oh, you did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." Nodded, he looked tired now. The tension was leaving his body, and exhaustion was rushing in to fill the space. "We did it," he corrected. "I could not have done this without you." They walked through the tunnel together, leaving the chaos behind. The sound of the crowd faded slowly as they moved deeper into the station. In the following hours, the galaxy burned with the news. Every communication channel, every news network, every social platform carried the same story. A human had defeated the unbroken. A human had used ancient rules that everyone had forgotten. A human had proven that the galaxy's idea of strength was incomplete. The reactions were mixed. The older, more powerful species were furious. They called the victory a trick, a cheat, a violation of the spirit of the combat trials. They demanded that the rules be changed to prevent anything like this from ever happening again. But the younger species saw things differently. They saw a civilization that had only been spacefaring for 40 years stand against an empire that had dominated for thousands. They saw proof that intelligence could triumph over raw power. They saw hope. Messages flooded Earth's diplomatic channels, trade offers, alliance proposals, invitations to join councils and assemblies that had never included humans before. 3 days after the fight, sat in his quarters on the station. He was watching footage of his own match for the 100th time, not because he enjoyed it, but because he needed to learn from it. There would be more challenges, more fights, more opportunities to prove humanity's worth. The door opened and entered with a data pad in her hands. "You have messages," she said, "a lot of messages." From who?" "Everyone. They want to form a military alliance. They want to share technology. 6 different species want you to train their warriors." She paused. "And they have sent you a formal challenge." Looked up a challenge. Handed him the data pad. On the screen was a message written in ceremonial, the language he had learned in 3 days. 12 of their greatest warriors have signed it, explained. They demand a rematch. They say your victory was not legitimate because you did not fight directly. They want you to face them under different rules, modern rules that do not allow ancient rights. Read the message carefully. The words were angry and proud. They had been humiliated and they wanted revenge. They wanted to show the galaxy that their strength was still supreme. "What will you do?" asked. Set down the data pad. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was burning with shame and rage. Somewhere out there, 12 warriors were training to destroy him. Somewhere out there, the old powers were planning their response to humanity's rise. "I will study the new rules," said. "I will learn their weaknesses. I will find the gaps that no one else can see." Well, he turned to face. "And then I will beat them again." Smiled. "They will be expecting that. They will write the rules to be perfect this time. They will make sure there are no loopholes." "Then I will find a way that is not a loophole," said. "I will find something they have not thought of, because that is what humans do. We adapt, we improvise, we solve problems that are not supposed to be solved." He picked up the data pad again and opened a new file. It was the rule book for the modern combat trials, thousands of pages of regulations and requirements. "They think they can beat us by writing better rules," said, "but rules are just another kind of problem, and every problem has a solution." Sat down across from him. "Then we should get started." They worked through the night. They analyzed every rule. They discussed every strategy. They planned for every possibility. The stars turned slowly outside the window, and the station hummed with the sound of a galaxy that was still in shock. Far away, on a dozen different worlds, beings of all species talked about what had happened at the Crucible. They debated the meaning of the humans' victory. They argued about whether it was fair. They wondered what it meant for the future of galactic civilization. But one thing was clear to everyone. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. On his home planet, sat alone in a dark room. His arms hung at his sides. His eyes stared at nothing. He had been unbroken for so long that he had forgotten what breaking felt like. Now he knew, and he would spend the rest of his life trying to understand how a creature so small had destroyed everything he believed about himself. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. They did not fully understand what had happened at the Crucible, but they knew it was important. They knew that one of their own had done something that the whole galaxy thought was impossible. And on the station continued reading, page after page, rule after rule. He was already planning for the next challenge, the next fight, the next impossible problem that needed to be solved. Because that was who he was, that was who humans were. They did not accept limits. They did not believe in impossible. They looked at walls and saw doors. They looked at rules and saw opportunities. They looked at champions and saw weaknesses. The message from the warriors sat unopened on his data pad. They wanted revenge. They wanted to prove that their strength was still supreme. Smiled as he read another page of rules. Let them come, he thought. Let them bring their strength and their speed and their ancient pride. He would be ready. And when they demanded to know how he planned to beat them, he would give them the same answer he had given everyone who thought humans did not belong among the stars. You should write better rules. Outside the window, the stars burned with cold and ancient light. They had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. They had witnessed empires that lasted for and species that vanished in a single generation. Now they watched something new, a young species, small and fragile by galactic standards, beginning to find its place among the powers of the universe. The humans were not the strongest, they were not the fastest, they were not the oldest but they were clever, and in a galaxy built on rules and traditions that no one bothered to question, cleverness was the most dangerous weapon of all. The story of the human who defeated the Unbroken spread across 12 star systems. It became a legend, a warning, a promise. And in quiet corners of the galaxy, in the places where the weak and the small had always been told to accept their place, beings of all species began to wonder. If the humans could do it, perhaps they could too. Perhaps strength was not the only thing that mattered. Perhaps the galaxy was about to change. And at the center of that change, reading rule books in a small room on a space station between dying stars, was a single human who had learned the most important lesson of all. Every system has weaknesses, every rule has gaps, every champion can fall. You just have to know where to look.